Do you keep drawing the same t-shirt over and over? Do your t-shirt look like they're made out of metal? Well, you came to the right place. I'm going to teach you ways to bring unique textures to your clothes using Clip Studio Paint. Also, all the sketches shown in this video can be downloaded in the description to be used as a practice to learn how to render clothes yourself. Alright, let's start with the basics of a simple cotton t-shirt and go through some of the methods we'll be using for all types of different materials in this tutorial. So in one layer, we'll have a line art or sketch of the shirt, and on the layer below, we're going to have a solid color. We'll achieve that easily by using the reference layer functionality by first setting our line art layer as a reference layer. Second, we'll fill the layer below with a solid color without worrying too much about going over the lines. Then open the Tool Property window under the Window tab and open the Eraser options by clicking the wrench icon. There, at the very bottom, under Anti-Overflow, enable the Do Not Cross Lines of Reference layer option. Enabling the Do Not Cross Lines of Reference layer will allow you to easily delete the overflow of colors outside the lines. Now we can even easily change the color of the shirt by using the Fill tool, in case you want a blue, green, or perhaps even a red t-shirt. I'll choose blue myself. We can now make a new layer and clip it to the fill layer we just made by using this icon right here, changing its blending mode to multiply by using the drop-down menu, and use a darker color to start creating some shading. This step might require a bit of trial and error, but following the sketch line of the creases can really help guide you along. Don't forget you can use the blend tool to soften the edges of some of the shadings. We can also optionally make an overlay layer on top as well to add some light using a soft brush. After we establish some shading on our shirt, we can open up Clip Studio Assets by going to the File tab on the top left, and then on the Clip Studio Assets tab on the left in the newly opened window, we will look up cotton and filter it as an image resource using the search bar. There, we'll find a texture of cotton, and we'll click Download. Wait for it to finish, and then over at Manage Materials, we can simply drag and drop our newly downloaded asset onto the canvas. I'll include this image resource in the shared file along with the content ID in the description below. Then I'll go ahead and clip our newly downloaded cotton texture to the solid color layer and change the blending option to overlay and reduce the opacity to about 70%. Textures tend to not show as much in shadows, so I'd recommend erasing some of the texture where you have deeper shadows. Now we can take the line art layer we have above, lock its transparency using this icon, and color it the same color as the darkest shade in the shirt. Coloring the lines of the shirt a darker color will help blend the line art with the color of the shirt, so the black won't be clashing with the rest of the image. And now we have a cotton t-shirt, so we can move on to some new materials. So we'll go ahead and start working on a pair of fox leather pants. Just like before, we're going to set our line art layer as a reference layer, make a layer below it, and color it a solid color. I recommend using a really dark color for the fox leather because it has some strong highlights. We are going to work in a bit of an opposite way of what we did with the shirt, by making a normal blending mode layer above our solid color layer, clip it on, and then paint in the light right away instead of painting in the shadows. I'd highly recommend looking at some references as you paint in the highlights to have a guide to where and how to put in those lights. I'll go ahead and include my own rendering in the shared file so you can use it as a reference as well. Now, after we finish painting in the basic lighting, we'll make a new normal layer and clip it again, and paint in white highlights. I recommend enabling brush size pressure to create the shapes for the white highlights. And then, just like before, I'll go to the Clip Studio Assets section and look up leather under the Image Material tag. Then I'll download the black leather texture, wait for it to finish, click the Manage Materials tab, and then again simply drag and drop our material onto the canvas. And just like before, I'll be clipping down the leather texture to our solid color layer and set it to multiply blending mode from the drop-down menu. And make sure to put it under the two other layers so the texture won't add too much noise. Now we usually have characters wearing this article of clothing, so I'm going to pop in real quick and act as our model for this demonstration. You might notice that the shirt sort of falls flat and feels rather two-dimensional. That is due to the lack of cast shadows. There is a really easy fix we can do to remedy that. We'll make a new layer below our solid color layer and set it to multiply. Lower its opacity by about 50% and gently go over the edges of the shirt with a dark color. This will create a cast shadow and help separate the shirt from the body. And here we go, now we can go ahead and make a different outfit entirely. Starting with the flannel shirt, we'll go ahead and just like before, create our solid color layer. And in the layer above, carefully shade the shirt, doing our best to keep in line with the sketch lines for the shadow shapes on the shirt. And we'll use an overlay layer to add some light on top of the shirt and make sure both our shading multiply layer and the overlay layer are clipped down to the solid color layer. Then we'll go ahead and get ourselves a good looking flannel texture from the CSP assets and drag it over to the canvas and set it to overlay. Lower the opacity a bit and we're almost done. We just need to color our line art or sketch from black to dark red, and that's it. We got ourselves a flannel shirt for our character. Now we can go ahead and make a pair of jeans with a similar method. You'll set the line art layer as a reference layer, create a layer below it and fill it with a light blue color, and erase using our eraser while making sure that the option for do not cross lines for the reference layer is checked. Denim is not a reflective material unlike the fox leather we painted earlier, so the shading of it will be similar to the way we shaded t-shirt, by making a new multiply blending mode layer and painting it with a basic soft shading all around the pants and following the sketch marks for the shadows. And then have an overlay layer on top with some soft shading for the light. I recommend using this saturated color when adding light so as to not oversaturate our colors. And like earlier, we will look for a denim texture or jeans texture on the asset store to find a fitting texture. Download it and under Material Manager, we can drag and drop it onto the canvas, making sure it's clipped to our solid color layer. Set it to overlay mode and then lower the opacity by a bit. Color the line art layer by locking its transparency and we'll have denim looking pants. However, a lot of denim shorts tend to have ripped cloth at the end of them. A good way to achieve that look is to choose a light blue color with a new normal layer that isn't clipped down and gently draw the ripped lines. I'd recommend using a reference photo to get this just right. After we finish with our denim, we can go ahead and add some tights underneath too. Drawing tights is a bit different but really simple too. We're going to go ahead and use a really simple and easy method instead of drawing everything ourselves. I'll go ahead and make a new multiply layer and clip it down to my character. I will then use the Clip Studio assets and look for tights without the image material tag and download a tights brush and drag it from the materials tab onto my brush section instead of onto the canvas. And then I'll use that brush to draw the shape of the legs. I'll do this in 2 layers, one for each leg, and then merge them together. I can also click the mask button next to the new merged tights layer and erase small parts of it, so I can later make a new layer above it and draw with a new normal pen brush some tears and wears to create a ripped tights effect. This is very similar to what we did with the denim jeans, so you can go ahead and get a reference for that as well. Now we can go ahead and mix our knowledge of making clothes and similar materials with something new to create some medieval armor. As usual, we will set our line layer as a reference layer, create a solid color layer below, and clip a multiply and overlay layer above for the shadow and light respectively. However, in metallic materials, we usually have a wider range of values we need to use to register the material as a metal. This means that essentially we need to have deeper, darker shadows and stronger, lighter highlights. One of the ways I like to work with metal is that after I create the usual layers, I merge them all together into one layer and smooth out some of the line art with the metallic parts. Then, just as before, we open up the Clip Studio assets to get a metal texture. Apply it as an overlay layer, lower the opacity, and then as an extra, make a normal layer on top and draw some wear and tear to the metal. By setting the entire layer as a reference layer, we will do the same thing we did for the t-shirt to fill in the cloth part, and the same for the skirt as it is made out of cloth as well. And we're going to go ahead and use the same method to draw the sabatons, the metal boots, as we did with the breastplate. We're creating all the usual layers, merging them and applying the texture just like before. And this is a simple method of painting different materials for articles of clothing or armor. Of course, there is always room to improve, and one good way you can try to apply better textures to your paintings is by transforming them to the shape of the cloth. It is a bit more time consuming, but depending on what it is you're painting, you might want to opt for this optional method. So we're going to use the liquefy tool that can be found in the blending subtool to morph the texture layer that we dragged from the Clip Studio assets earlier. We will shape the texture to fit the shape of the body underneath to give it the illusion of depth. And you can turn off the shirt or lower its opacity to see the body underneath to have a guideline. And after we morphed our texture to fit the body, we can see the difference between the before and after we manipulated the texture. It's pretty substantial, right? You can of course do this with every single one of the clothing we just made, or texture materials to increase the quality of the final result. And just like earlier, I left you a link to the file including all the textures and sketches below so you can practice yourself. And sometimes it's best to study one specific thing instead of worrying about sketching as well. Thank you for watching, and if you liked it, heart this tutorial on the Clip Studio side as well. It will really help me a lot. Thank you for watching, bye!